Hello everyone. Welcome to the session 2 of the 2024 APRU SWM Global ESG and Sustainability Lecture Series hosted by the APRU Sustainable Waste Management Program. Today's lecture will be delivered by Professor Mellissa Withers, the Director of the APRU Global Health Program and who is also a professor at the Keck School of Medicine at USC, University of Southern California, USA. Following the lecture, we'll have a panel discussion and a Q&A session. I am Samhita Ankareddy, the moderator for today's session, and I am also a PhD student at Korea University. Before we begin the lecture, I would like to give a brief introduction to the APRU SWM program. The APRU Sustainable Waste Management Program is an integral part of the APRU membership and consistently works towards achieving the UN SDGs through thoughtfully designed events and programs aimed at raising awareness on sustainability, the UN SDGs, and the concept of ESG. The 2024 APRU SWM Global ESG and Sustainability Lecture Series commenced this April, and the first session drew audience from various geographies and diverse expertise. We encourage you to look forward to today's session as well as the upcoming sessions. Participate actively and engage with us further. You can find more information on our website, on our speakers, as well as the registration details. Moving to today's session, Professor Withers will discuss about the global scenario of scientific knowledge production and will delve into how historical power dynamics still shape the distribution of resources, influence research agendas, and perpetuate inequalities between the global north and global south. Following the lecture, Professor Withers will engage in a discussion with a panel of experts drawing on their expertise and geographic perspectives. Before we dive into the session, I would like to give you all a brief about our speaker. Dr. Mellissa Withers is the Director of the Global Health Program of the Association of Pacific Rim Universities Network, APRU, and a professor in the Department of Population and Public Health Sciences at the Keck School of Medicine of University of Southern California. She has a PhD in Community Health Sciences from the UCLA Fielding School of Public Health with a minor in Cultural Anthropology. Her primary research interests lie in community participatory research, immigrant health, mental health, maternal health, women's empowerment, gender-based violence, and global sexual and reproductive health. You can also gain insights into Professor's latest research and publications by searching for Mellissa Withers on Google Scholar. At the end of the seminar, we'll have a panel discussion and a Q&A session, and I request all of you to actively interact with Professor Withers and our panelists. With this, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to our speaker, Professor Withers, our panelists, and our participants. Without further ado, Professor Withers, the floor is all yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for the introduction. It's really my pleasure to be here. I love the fact that the APRU initiatives or programs are collaborating and working together because we see so much synergy right in our work. So very honored to be part of this lecture series. And let me go ahead and share my slides here. So as mentioned, today I'm going to talk about a critical evaluation of global scientific knowledge production. And we've asked some distinguished panelists to be here. I'm delighted to say that we have experts and colleagues from Vietnam, Hong Kong, Japan, Philippines, China, and the US who will be sharing their perspectives on this topic as well. So you might wonder why someone from the Global Health Program is invited to speak on a series that's mostly about sustainability and sustainable waste management. But really, we have to appreciate that we need to tackle these issues from many perspectives. And there definitely is some application in the real world to these issues to global health. And so I think this is the perfect opportunity to talk and to really analyze also more broadly, how do we do these global health partnerships that are really crucial to the work that we do. So this is a shoe. Why am I showing you today a shoe? I was fascinated to find out that not everyone sees the shoe within as the same colors that I do. So this is a weird optical illusion that maybe you have seen. Some people see the shoe as like pink and white. And if we were able to see, I see you all, I would ask you to raise your hand, but some people like me see this as more of a turquoise gray. And so we're looking at the very same image, but we're interpreting it in a different way. And I love that. And I think we need more of that. So that's kind of what I'm going to be talking to you about today. Our world's contemporary challenges are complex. We're talking about pollution. We're talking about migration and food insecurity and sustainable developments in cities and landscapes. We're talking about issues of diversity and inclusion and discrimination. Natural weather patterns are changing. We're losing biodiversity, and climate change is real. We're talking about issues of food insecurity and demographic shifts, such as an aging population. Well, we know that these complex challenges that are facing our world today cannot be addressed or resolved by any single discipline. There is a need for collaboration on an international level and on an interdisciplinary level. And so what I would like to talk to all of you about today and have us discuss is to really challenge us to reconsider how we produce our scientific evidence. What is considered scientific knowledge? Whose voices and whose work are we prioritizing, and who is being left out of this work? So let's start by looking at the partnerships between the global north and the global south. So what are we talking about when I say partnerships? Let's kind of back up there. Partnerships are really just, they involve two or more organizations that are collaborating towards a common goal. Often in my work in global health, for example, they can involve different kinds of partners, and probably in your work too, right? We're collaborating with maybe local or federal governments, but also the private sector and corporations are really crucial to our work. We're looking at things from an academic point of view, but we're also needing to incorporate the community and the community's voices. So lots of different stakeholders are working together. So let's think about how we frame North-South partnerships, which in global health and many other disciplines are really widely promoted as a mechanism to promote equity sometimes, to strengthen our health systems, to do research in low resource settings, to maybe even achieving the Sustainable Development Goals through these partnerships, right? Goal number 17. But typically, global health partnerships have really directed Northern research, Northern resources and interests and agendas and priorities, whereas the activities, the work is being carried out in the global South. So the global institutions and researchers are predominantly in high-income countries, but the research or the interventions, the programs are being implemented in the global South. And so often these partnerships involve the theoretical conceptualization of research, the methodological innovations are really coming from scholars out of the high-income countries, while the role for the low-income countries researchers is more about the data collection. And there are some inherent inequalities there, right? Often comes out of the fact that research grants for projects are channeled through researchers and institutions in the North. But this is really because the researchers maybe in the global South have not had the same resources available, such as protected time for research or entire teams to help submit grant applications, or the advanced laboratory and research infrastructure. Maybe they don't have postdocs and other research assistants to help generate all of these grants. And so as a result, there are inherent inequalities, as I mentioned. And these inequalities or inequities in resources and power are disproportionately disadvantaging the populations in the global South. And I found an interesting example of this from empirical data. There was a scholar, Plamondon, I think is how you pronounce it, in 2001, who examined 30 articles specifically on North-South partnerships and looked at things like power dynamics, inequities, challenges, contradictions encountered in these partnerships. And what I found really fascinating is that these partnerships were often portrayed as inherently beneficial for Southern partners, without really considering how these partnerships may reinforce these inequities. And they actually said that, we need to reconsider again how to do this. Another example specifically was from Dean et al., who looked at an analysis of specifically a UK Africa partnership. And also what I found fascinating was even the way that the partnership was framed. There was this tendency of the partners in the North to frame the successes of the partnership in terms of what they gave to their partners in the South. But the Northern partners were, according to the authors, unable to identify many benefits to themselves, whereas the Southern partners didn't talk much about their contributions or their reciprocal benefits of these partnerships. Instead, the Southern partners were more likely to, as the author said, express gratitude for the opportunity. And so that can be problematic. So there are definitely these typical partnerships and the way that this has been done in many circumstances, not all, of course, but many, is that these partnerships are serving the needs and interests of the privileged partners while entrenching these inequitable relationships and even strain limited material and human resources of the less privileged partners. I see a lot of grant applications or students going abroad or whatever, where you look at the budget and, oh yeah, I'm going for a summer. I'm going to spend 6 weeks in the field and I'm going to do this research. But then you look at the budget and you say, well, do you speak the local language? Have you been there before? Do you know the community? No. Who's going to be translating? And have you put in the budget for that? Because otherwise you're straining the resources of the partner in that country. I would also like us to consider and take a more critical focus on the voices that are being left out. So we know that the production of scientific knowledge, think all the way back to even the way that we talk about world history. My stepdaughter is taking a world history class in high school as required, and the class is about European history. Okay, well, how about world history, right? Why is our scientific knowledge production so Eurocentric? This has unfolded really over generations, where the non-West, at least coming from my part of the world, has been seen as sort of this passive recipient of this knowledge that's being spread really in one direction. But who are we leaving out of the conversation and out of our own research? Could be people with lived experience, or indigenous communities' knowledge, or marginalized communities' knowledge. This is another really interesting example. Gomez et al. In 2022 published a paper where they looked at nearly 20 million papers across 150 fields over 35 years from the Microsoft Academic Graph. And they found that scientific communities were increasingly centering research from highly active countries in high-income settings, while overlooking work from other countries. And so they noted that there was a growing inequality in the production of scientific knowledge, and more importantly, that this inequality is likely to pose substantial challenges to the growth of novel ideas. This has been termed extraversion. So this is, while the global north may be self-citing and inward-looking, other areas of the world are also perpetuating that. Other societies are also oriented towards sources of authority coming from societies that aren't necessarily their own. And so this extroversion is, again, problematic. And here is a great example that came out of a study published last year by Baber, who found that Global South scholarship often names the site of the research, like in the title even, as, whatever, study on chronic disease in Myanmar, whatever. And framing it really as a case study because of the geographical focus, whereas often the papers that are coming out of the global north rarely say this study is from the US or Canada or wherever, but really kind of frame it as having universal relevance. And so this has created significant inequalities in citation counts. And I'm going to show you some examples in a second. But I think we need to focus a lot more on decolonizing this knowledge production, to stop looking at things as East or West or North or South or indigenous or colonial, to stop perceiving this, Western knowledge systems as like, universal or grade A, standard, but really to legitimize other sources of knowledge by exploring alternative epistemologies, alternative relevance, or alternative worldviews and experiences. And that includes, as I mentioned, indigenous, marginalized populations, and just different points of view. So again, thinking about in the coming decades, thinking about some of our world's biggest challenges. So those, thinking about global warming and climate change, the severest impacts are going to be felt in low resource settings, food insecurity, natural disasters, or thinking about issues around infectious diseases, or even gender inequalities or gender-based violence. Those are all going to be affecting low resource or low and middle income countries at a disproportionate rate. But yet a lot of times their voices are not being heard because they're not part of these true equitable partnerships. And I really liked this quote of, you can play a symphony alone, but it takes an orchestra. You can't play a symphony alone. It takes an orchestra to play it. So there are many benefits of diverse partnerships. The greater variety of perspectives and different views strengthens our research and gives us insight into the range of perspectives and experiences. These diverse partnerships can drive innovation and disciplinary breakthroughs and are really one of the most important forms of knowledge creation, helping us to solve complex and important global problems. And you've probably seen this on the bottom. This is another one of those images where some people see like a bunny and some people see a duck, right? We need more of this. Just as an example, I was just thinking about this because of since COVID, there's a lot of like anti-immigration sentiment in the United States and other places around the world. But just think about how important immigrants have been in the US just in terms of COVID-19 breakthroughs. And I'll give you some examples. So Moderna, the first company to ship a vaccine for testing, was founded by an immigrant. Instacart, which provided our groceries and really has become a lifeline for a lot of American consumers who maybe can't get out to the grocery stores, founded by an immigrant from South Asia. The N95 respiratory mask was founded by an immigrant from Taiwan who arrived in the US as an international student. Zoom, Zoom, a company that we all know very well, very familiar with these days, almost didn't happen, at least not in the US. A Chinese-born immigrant, Eric Yuan, actually was denied the visa 8 times before finally making it to the US and creating Zoom. And in the US, about 60% of PhD researchers in the life sciences and medicine are all foreign-born. So we need immigrants, and we could talk more about that another time. But there is a lot of evidence for the benefits of these diverse partnerships. And I'll give you another interesting example. There was a study that looked at, Freeman and Wang looked at author ethnic homogeneity in the US and looked at 2.5 million research papers published between 1985 and all the way to 2008 in 11 different fields, where the authors had US addresses. And so they used the surname as a proxy for ethnicity because obviously they couldn't contact every single author, but they found that, let me show you here, greater author ethnic homogeneity resulted in lower impact journals and fewer citations. But papers with more diversity in the authors, 4 or 5 authors of multiple ethnicity, had up to a 10% difference in the mean number of citations, even holding fixed all other things like authors' previous publishing, productivity, etc. And they found that they also were getting published in higher impact journals and receiving more citations as well. Okamura also looked at this in 2009 with similar 2,500 publications, but also just in the 2000s, and found an increase in even one discipline across that team was associated with a 20% increase in research impact as measured by citations. And why? Well, they posited that they think that maybe it's because researchers may think differently when they work in diverse groups, because they either expect greater challenges to their ideas, or because small group dynamics are altered, or that communication, linguistically or just culturally may be a bit more challenging. And so they have to put in some extra effort to really work through these challenges in terms of the research design. And it's really fascinating. I think, yes, we maybe intuitively know that these diverse teams are important, but there's actual evidence out there. And if you need more examples, there are a lot, and I'm not going to go into all of them, but take a look at these, just one after another of work on this. So Helen Keller said, alone we can do so little, together we can do so much. And I think that's really, really important for us to remember. So what are the critical elements for effective partnerships? And I'm happy to say that the facilitators that I invited today are very close collaborators and colleagues and friends of mine. And we work together on many projects across many years now, really. And how do you do this when you're not even in the same country? Well, you work together, you have a shared strategic vision and really clear communication and transparency, and mutual respect and trust. And you also have to ensure that there are bi-directional benefits and reciprocity in terms of what everyone is getting out. So appreciating the unique contribution that each person on that team can make. And good relationships outside of work also help a lot. So, summary, these partnerships are frequently portrayed as beneficial for Southern partners, but we really need to consider unequal power and access and all the other inequities that have led to this system, and really take a more critical focus on the way that academic or scientific knowledge is produced. We need to stop privileging the global North, both from the North and South perspective, and really put more value on the South's contributions, on South to South partnerships, and privileging voices that we often don't hear in our work. We know that diversity in partners has many benefits. And I'll look forward in a moment to the panel discussion that we're going to have. But I wanted also to take this opportunity to tell you about a couple of examples of upcoming events that you might be interested in. So our annual Global Health Conference this year, it's our 17th annual Global Health Conference, is being held in Bangkok on November 4th through 6th. And the theme is harmonizing human and planetary health through innovation, AI, and digital transformation. And abstract submission is now open, and I'll put the info there in the chat if you're interested. We also have an annual APRU Global Health Student Poster Competition. This is our 10th annual. And we award prizes first, second, and third place in both undergrad and graduate categories. Again, abstract submission is now open, anyone from any university around the world is eligible to submit, and I'll put the link in the chat. I would like to close by saying, by reminding us about this African proverb that I love so much. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So thank you so much. Look forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much, Professor Withers, for your talk and insights about colonialism and power dynamics in the global scientific knowledge production. I'm sure the audience are already thinking about the ways these issues can be resolved. Now, we will shortly move to the panel discussion session. Before that, we have a polite request for our attendees. We'd like to capture a group photo with all of you at the end of the panel discussion. Since we are conducting the session in Zoom webinar mode, it comes with its own set of advantages and disadvantages. To ensure that everyone's videos are visible, we will need to promote each attendee to the panelist role. We will assist in promoting you as panelists towards the end of the session for the group photo, and we kindly ask for your cooperation and understanding. Thank you very much, everyone. Now let us proceed to the panel discussion. Allow me to introduce our esteemed panel members for today's session. We have Professor Masamin Zimba from the Department of International Community Health, Graduate School of Medicine of the University of Tokyo. He is the president of the Japan Association for International Health, and his expertise spans health promotion, global health, and human security. We have Professor Yinze Jin, who is a global health researcher and academic affiliated with Peking University. She leads numerous high-profile research projects funded by organizations like the China National Natural Science Foundation, World Health Organization, and Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. We have Dr. Catherine Zhou, who is a teaching associate at the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. She has a PhD degree in computer science and engineering, and currently her teaching and research interests include research integrity, emotional resilience and intelligence, and mentorship. We also have Professor Nina Castillo-Carandang, who is a professor of health sociology and global health of the College of Medicine in the University of Philippines, Manila. She works in the fields of health social science, clinical epidemiology, and global health. Finally, we have Dr. Tuan Nguyen, who is a dedicated medical epidemiologist with over 25 years of experience in international health, focusing on maternal and child health, communicable and non-communicable diseases, and health disparities. Now, we will get started with the panel discussion. The panel discussion will go for about 20 minutes. We also request our attendees to post their questions freely to the chat box or raise their hands using the raise hand function on Zoom to ask a question to the panel or discuss something with them. Professor Withers, over to you.
Thank you. Thanks so much. So maybe I'll just open it up to comments first from our panelists. So does anyone want to start us off by sharing a comment? Jimba?
Mellissa, thank you very much for your excellent presentation. I have 2 comments. Overarching theme of the lecture series is sustainability. And I think you identified many problems in global health research. And my question is, what should be sustained? Maybe creating a diverse partnership, and you identified what to do, but how to do also might be very important. And I'd like to know your idea about what we must sustain or what we should promote going beyond sustainability. And that's one point. And another thing is your slide number 11, about the decolonizing knowledge production. You talked about separation, indigenous, colonial, Western, Eastern, Northern, and Southern. And recently, I have been interested in getting away from separation. In the past, we divided the world into 1, 2, 3, and the third word was frequently used. Now, almost no one used the third word. Then it moved to developing country and developed country. And Hans Rosling criticized it, and he divided the world into 4: low income, lower middle, upper middle, and high income countries. Now, again, we started to say global south and global north. It makes the story simple, but this philosophy of dividing the world into 2 or 3 or 4 might be reviewed or reconsidered again. In the world, we have nearly 200 countries and other territories and places. So I propose to be away from this separation, to do our global health research discussion. That's all my comments.
Thank you, Jimba. Yeah, so, and I invite the panelists also to share their thoughts. So what should we sustain or what should we promote? It's a tough question. I think the motivation behind our work really has to do with solving or promoting equality or equity. I think many of us came into global health work because of the desire to address some of these inequities in our work. And I think that really should be at the forefront of whatever we decide to do, that we come together really to address the inequities, and whether that's starting with the power or resources. I think that's really kind of what motivates, I know what motivates your work and my work and probably the others on the panel. But did anybody else in the panel want to, Tuan? I see you. Yeah.
So good morning and good evening, everyone. So actually, I would like to start by telling my real story. So that happened around 30 years ago when I just graduated from medical school, and at that time I joined a research group. And with that research group, at a point we try to support other team. So one of the team that we support is a researcher from high-income country. And he come to Vietnam to do some qualitative study, and definitely they don't really know anything about our own language. So all of the data collection and support is coming from us. And many of the ideas, for example, because of the culture, that's come from us. But then it's turned to the kind of writing report and publication. It tend not to include any of us, to the point that we feel very upset, because qualitative is the thing that you really need to learn to know about the culture, right? And actually, and to the point, he said that, okay, he will allow one table. Actually, we have 4, and he allowed one table to be a part of the co-author. But at the end, we said, no, it's kind of not ethics. So all of us decide not to be in that paper. And later on, I also try to tell that story to a kind of another people, scientists also from high-income country, actually from North Europe. And so they said, oh, because you don't know how to write. So that's their kind of their privilege. Yeah, so that happened many years ago. But I think this is really wrong. However, I really think that now is getting much better. So so I could see that even in many journals, they want to see the data is coming from kind of other country. They will ask why they don't have the author from that country. So that's one of the very good thing. Many grant applications, they also need to have the full PI from lower income countries. So I think it's much better that way. However, I believe that we still could see some disparity, as Dr. Mellissa mentioned. In the progress, and actually many of that in collaboration with us in the last more than 10 years in publication. We could also learn a lot from you and also other team members, so thank you very much. I also think that when I look at other groups, they also think about the efficiency. For example, okay, so we are kind of in local, we go for data collection, we do some data analysis, but because kind of we have more like your native language, so it's better to have you to write the paper. So actually, we ourselves, I mean, not in kind of low income country, we don't really learn about the practice, the good practice in writing. So actually, that's also maybe that's kind of the backward from ourselves as well. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think we'll come back to that some of those points in a minute. Yinzi, you had some comments, and then Nina.
Yeah, thank you very much for including me. And I think it's very inspiring about your speech from Mellissa. And I think I totally agree with that. The Professor Masami mentioned that how to promote the sustainability. And I totally agree with Professor Tuan's perspective from develop cooperation project or practice perspective. And I think I really would like to underline the decolonization is really quite important in global health as we center equity in health as a goal of global health. So I would like to emphasize maybe the importance of the decolonization in global health education. Just as a viewpoint published in the Lancet on this March, the Lancet and the colonialism, the past, present, and the future, the viewpoint that the proposed reforms of medical education in colonized countries published in the Lancet were Eurocentric. And as documented in a 2022 Lancet publication, were neither empirical grounded in nor informed by the indigenous systems of health knowledge or social organization. So I think the global health education matters. Students to be educated and to be trained will be researchers or project leaders of global cooperation in health. So we have some studies about this issue on the equity-oriented global health curricular development, how to include the stakeholders with lived experiences in curricular development to ensure the relevance to the context being studied. And we also have some studies about how to develop the global health exchange programs to confront the power imbalances and that to continue to shape the global health partnership and educational programs between high-income countries and low and middle-income countries. So there are maybe several approaches for how academic institutions can best train students, like coursework, practices, and mentorship. So I always, for example, I always tell students when we talk about the global health projects, when they, for the overseas global health projects, when you stay in class, you have hundreds of questions and problems about the global health issues. And when you go to the local, you can get thousands of answers and solutions. So how to cultivate students' problem solving and critical thinking on the global health issues, particularly the equity issue or the issues from global south, is quite important. Yeah, that's what I really want to end about the global health education.
Thank you so much. Wow, that's wonderful to hear that there's this reform going on. Hopefully it will happen across lots of programs and economies. Thank you for that. Nina.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Professor Mellissa, for addressing the elephant in the room. It's a big elephant. We all feel it, but we don't talk about it as if it didn't really strike us straight to the core of our very being. Thank you also for the comments of Professor Jimba. What should be sustained? I mean, we know what the problem is, but what should we start and continue doing? I think that's an important question. And also for Dr. Tuan, for sharing your very personal experiences. We've had that too. And also for Dr. Yinzi, challenging what we actually teach our students. For me, I'm the only sociologist in the Faculty of Medicine since it was created in 1905. So I come from a very unique position, if you would say also of marginality in my own institution, being the only one. And I always start with context matters. The questions we ask influence what we see, what we do, and how we relate. So if we want to change the world, which is, I presume, what we're trying to do by having this conversation, we need to be willing to change ourselves and change how we see and understand things. I think by Professor Mellissa starting off the conversation and addressing the elephant in the room, that is very, very important. So thank you. There's also the issue here of science, equity, and ethics. Whatever we're going to do has to be the best science, whatever limitations we have. But science for whom? That's the question. Is it just for our professional advancement? Is it just for us to gain access for funding? Science for whom? So definitely the underserved populations. Professor Jimba also addressed a very important thing. It's like Humpty Dumpty who sat on the wall and fell and came into multiple pieces. How do we actually put Humpty Dumpty together again? As he rightly said, the global north, the global south, the language in which we refer to the problem, I think, is also problematic, as Professor Jimba has pointed out. The discussions on diversity, equity, and inclusion miss one element: belonging. So do we actually feel that we belong? So any discussions on diversity, equity, inclusion should also include the element of belonging. How do we actually feel that we belong? Many ways. Global scientific production, or knowledge production for that matter, is a creative process. It's a scientific process, it's a creative process. But I think we also forget that it should also be fun. And that is how you will actually develop a sense of belonging, by also putting in an element of fun. We've forgotten that. We're so straight, we're so strict about our relationships that the element of fun. And the element of fun doesn't just happen. You need to nurture partnerships, as Mellissa has pointed out. But it's also based on trust and mutual respect. I'm now teaching freshman medical students in our special program. It's our short-term medical degree. And instead of finishing in 9 years, they finish in 7 years. So you can just imagine how intelligent the students are. One of the things we're teaching them now is assertiveness. Starting their sentences by I feel, I think, I know, rather than a third person. So we should also probably learn from the lessons we're teaching our students on assertiveness too. That's very important. Assertive, but being respectful and nurturing trust. The spectrum of research for development is so wide. So I'm probably the only social scientist on the panel right now, but I also wear clinical epidemiology and other things too. By the way, I'm a second-generation scientist in my family. My late parents were also very well-known scientists, and they worked with global partners too. And remembering growing up, and until now that I am advanced also in age, things haven't changed. And I wonder why. So probably this conversation is an important one to continue, but we seem to have forgotten also the element of fun, which should also foster the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belongingness. Another issue is artificial eligibilities. So who's eligible to receive the services? For example, it's HIV/AIDS program. If it's donor-driven, only men who have sex with men and transgender women are eligible to be included in our project promoting pre-exposure prophylaxis. But the science says no. Anybody who actually wants to use it and perceives a risk should be able to access these services. But it's the donor-driven artificial eligibilities, which actually go against the science, which are also problematic. The word decolonization and colonization, just like what Professor Jimba is pointing out, the global north, the global south, and the first world, third world, the language also needs to be re-examined if we want to put back Humpty Dumpty together again. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those comments. And maybe we could talk a little bit more about that in a second, but I'd like to give Kate an opportunity to speak. Dr. Shao.
All right, thank you, Mellissa. Thank you. Several colleagues mentioned researchers, like Melissa's presentation mentions research citations. So just want to share this COPE survey, which was conducted in 2021 COPE about Committee on Publication Ethics. This is an example. So this is a diversity survey. COPE has been talking about diversity and inclusion for several years already. They conducted this survey in 2021 to see how diversity has been addressed in peer review for researchers. And they also got data from 2018, and we found during these 3 years, researchers got educated or trained to promote diversity and inclusion. This percentage was only increased from 13% to 21%. But still, I mean, in 2018, 69% of these researchers were not educated in terms of diversity and inclusion. And 3 years later, this percentage got dropped, but only to 61%. So, well, what we see here, I mean, this is just one survey. I'm not quite sure I can address the whole world, the big picture, but this survey, at least the data can tell us in certain areas for researchers in peer review, our research publications. We are moving forward in terms of promoting diversity and inclusion, but this process is not moving as fast as we want. So I want to share just 2 comments from this survey. One is diversity and inclusion in the process is essential in a global and diverse world. But another respondent commented that we may never have a fully representative panel, but at least we can understand their biases. So the point I want to make is that this is very, just like Nina said, it's the elephant in the room and very huge topic. It's really difficult and challenging to address all the issues that we want to, but at the same time, we're trying, but we can try more. So that's my point. Thank you, Mellissa.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Kate. And I think as you and some others have pointed out, I think the journals are also taking a harder look at this and encouraging and asking, are there co-authors from that country, and actually specifically requesting like diversity in terms of the authorship. I think also grantees, foundations I know in some of the global health work that I've done recently, the grantee is saying at least half of the resources need to stay in that country. And I think more could be done to kind of force this to happen on the side of the journals and the grantees. So I know we're kind of running out of time, but I'd like to go back to Jimba's first point and raise that again, and maybe discuss it a bit about how do we divide the world, or do we not do that? So I know, of course, we need to think of ourselves as one global community in order to come up with these solutions, because many of the problems that we're facing are shared problems across all communities. But also, I wonder if not having these divisions, like I'll give you an example from the United States. So there's a movement to like not ask about race, ethnicity, instead, right, just kind of lump everybody together, or not to ask about, say, gender or whatever. But in creating those categories, as problematic as they can be at times, it does give us the opportunity to look at our data in a disaggregated way in order to identify where the most disadvantaged groups are, and ideally then provide additional support or resources or whatever, to be able to understand the trends and who's being affected and not. So where do we go then with on one hand trying to have this shared global community experience, but on the other hand ensure that we have the data to look at particular populations in disaggregated ways? So does anybody have any ideas on how to do this in a more equitable way that's not just putting labels on, as we did way back when, third world, first world, and not, not having these labels that are kind of discriminatory? Jimba?
Several years ago, I wrote a corresponding article to the Lancet, and the title is "Developing Country is an Outdated Term." I analyzed this. I wrote this maybe 1 year after Hans Rosling died, and his obituary was published in the Lancet. And Hans Rosling used to say, "Don't use developing country or developed country." And then I checked Lancet articles, and they were still using developing and developed countries. So I suggested them to stop it. And then many articles started to use 4 criteria: low, lower middle, upper middle, and high income, and started not to use developing country. So this is one way to advocate the use of language. And I think we may need the support from a philosopher or social scientist to describe the problem of using these terms. And I often ask my student, how do you feel being called you came from developing country, or low-income country, or lower middle-income country? They were not all happy about that. So their voice of being called these names may be also challenged from them. And decolonization is part of decolonization movement, is overarching keywords to move this movement forward.
Thank you. And maybe you could even put I would like to read that again if I haven't, that paper. Maybe you could put the link to that paper for us in the chat. Any of the panelists, do you have any comments or ideas about this that you wanted to bring up? Juan, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, actually, I'm also very lucky to have the chance to attend Dr. Hans Rosling lecture back to the time I visited Sweden, and then actually I also have the chance to in Ecuador. I have the chance to have a monument north, east and the north and south, right? And stand there, and I said no, north or south. So actually I stand in the middle. So actually I think that for us as the one coming from a lower income country and then lower middle income country, now I think like stereotype, the characteristic by that is not a good thing. However, I also lean to Dr. Mellissa, we need to have something like to classify the group. So make it the way to make the classification rather than making something like make people feel like not happy, like Dr. Zimba mentioned. So I think like lower income, middle income, and higher income, they based on the level of income. So this kind of the very like accurate way of measurement. So that's fine for that. But we couldn't say that people coming from lower income country have certain thing. And actually, I want to raise another point about like the open access fee. So actually, that's also associated a lot with the publication, right? Because people don't have money to pay for that. So I think with that aspect, actually, we can become someone from a lower income country have an advantage because we don't for many journal we don't have to pay for the fee. But actually, that fee also create a lot of disparity in terms of publication, because it's depending on whether your organization have like any agreement with the journal or not, you could have a higher chance to publish. Yeah, so actually that's I would like to bring that point as well. Yeah.
Yes, that's an excellent point. And I know probably you all get the same, but I get a request at least once or twice a week from ResearchGate asking for me to send a paper that somebody can't access in another country, and always try to meet those requests. We have a question, and I think this is from Cheng. This is the big question of the day, really. What can we do to strengthen cooperation between our partners? And thanks for posting that, Jimba. What are some ideas or thoughts that our panelists have? It's really tough. Like it's easy. I know it's easy for me to raise a topic and say we need to do more, but in practice, how do we actually do this? Anybody want to comment?
Yeah, maybe not comment. Just want to add the importance of the strengthening the South-South cooperation in health practice to maybe reduce the gap or increase the cooperation. I'm from China. It is recognized that China is experiencing the translation in global health engagement. Let me take a case from China. During the past decades, beginning in the 1980s, China worked to stop the spread of malaria by multiple efforts from the Chinese government, launched a very nationwide project to find new treatments for malaria control. The effort involved more than 500 scientists from 60 institutions globally. When I was a student, I remember I was in a program about malaria control funded by the Global Fund. And really learned a lot. And at that time, I partnered with several countries from Global North and Global South. And we really learned a lot about the experiences, and we really achieved a lot in the programs towards the malaria elimination. Now China is certified malaria-free by WHO in 2021. So in recent years, China we have our own technologies and medicines and experience, and we have exploring ways to help other countries. Now I am leading a pilot project funded by the Gates Foundation on malaria control for the Sierra Leone. So we are still learning about how to design, to implement, to scale up, and how to transfer our knowledge and experience, which should be adapted to the local context based on their the approaches of implementation science. So South cooperation in health practice with I think is we need. We have a very long way to go forward. We need the mechanism of cooperation in terms of the funding, the resource mobilization, allocation, how to deliver the services, how to implementation and evaluation, how to the benefit sharing and the belongings, as mentioned by the Nina. So maybe first, for both the researchers from Global South or Global North, to dismantle the colonial structure and create equity and collaboration, we must be able to recognize how the colonialism permits the global health practice. How we must to recognize how, which is, I think, is the first step for us to move forward. Not only for the South-North cooperation, but also the South-South collaboration. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And maybe, I love that example. Maybe next year you can speak to us about all the things you learned in doing that. Thanks. Okay, so we have last three comments, Nina, Kate, and Jimba. Okay, Nina.
Thank you. It's not only a country versus another country, vis-a-vis another country, which is problematic, the relationships. It's also within our own countries. There's so many divisions also within our own countries. For example, metropolitan or highly urbanized areas are the incubators for science and technology. What happens to those parts of the country? I live in an archipelago with over 7,000 islands. It's complicated. To be able to communicate and work with colleagues who are in another island where internet is very poor, etc., etc. So we also have challenges inside our own countries. Then we talk about reaching across the aisle to another country or another group of countries. That is also challenging. So we should also recognize that urban areas are incubators and that cities are key actors within the own country, before we even talk about inter-country collaboration or partnerships. And there's a complex interplay of various ways by which we can do it. So the basic infrastructure for science and technology within our own countries really needs also further strengthening, so that we are also empowered to reach across the oceans to work with other partners too. Because if within our own countries, there are ivory towers where people are afraid to cross, and that's always accused. People from South, for example, of Manila would say, oh, it's Imperial Manila, imposing again its will on the rest of the Philippines. One interesting issue is also people from the so-called South who are now embedded in Western cultures. How do you actually consider yourselves? Are you a Southern researcher residing and working now? Whose perspective are you actually representing now? I think that issue also needs to be declared from the onset, because as I said, our context matters. If I am a Filipino and I still live and work in the Philippines and do my science, that's clear. But if I am a Filipino working and living overseas and doing my science there, that should also be declared, I think, because your positionality is important, and also your context, so that people understand. Just to go back to the issue here of knowledge production, article processing charges are so expensive. They would cost me several months of my salary as a professor. to be able to pay. So who can pay that? Not any of us. And even if I'm a senior professor, I do not have dedicated staff who will do complete staff work to prepare grants. So these are the realities of things. Or when we do international collaborations, my international collaborators would base their honoraria on their current salaries, which are several times of my monthly or even my yearly salary, and yet the work is going to be done in my country. So there's so many things that we need to sort out, and I think one way by which we can do it is to also have a dialogue with funding agencies, for the heads of academic institutions, research institutions, to please also recognize the difficult circumstances that we are working in, and also make leeway and make exceptions also to the rules. Oh, our accounting rules don't allow that. I'm sure there can be something which can be done, which is within the legal framework, but which is also respectful and cognizant. Again, to foster that sense of belonging. Why do we always have to feel like we are the other? We are the other because we don't have equal access to resources. So how can we foster that? So positionality, the context, the fact that even within countries, there are many divisions, many different contexts, needs to be factored into any discussions, and talking to the powers that be, the heads of the funding agencies, multilateral agencies, donor agencies, your country development mechanisms will also be a good start. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, and thanks for reminding us about the divisions or inequalities or inequities within our own societies too. That's a good point. Okay, Kate.
Hi. So the question is asking what forms. Well, since today we're talking about knowledge production, I personally believe the APRU form is a sustainable form to strengthen the cooperation. So this year will be the 9th year that we collaborated with Mellissa and some other colleagues on the global health ethics course. So we have gone through this for 9 years already, and we are looking forward to more years. The APRU, this is a platform on which we can do our work. At the same time, we have a group of people who are not being paid for this work, honestly, for the APRU work. But this group of people all have passion in whatever we're doing, knowledge production, even promoting policy or something. So if you ask me about this form, I say we just need a sustainable platform like APRU. And then on this form, we need to gather these people with a passion who just care about knowledge, care about education, care about helping other people, and with a global outlook. And I believe these two are the two necessities for us to build up such a form to strengthen the cooperation between the global south and global north. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. And we have fun doing it, right? All of you volunteer your time in so many ways to the APRU Global Health Program, but we enjoy it. We feel like we're getting benefits through the students' engagement and comments and the impact that we're having. Yeah. Even
the students, because of the class size limit, every year only can have about 20 students. But the amazing thing is that these 20 students, they have more than 10 nationalities. And last year or 2 years ago, it's 12 nationalities. And the department head got shocked and ran to me saying, Catherine, how come you got that done? I said, well, that's the APRU work. So it's pretty amazing work, I say.
Thank you, appreciate that. Jimba, we're gonna close with your comments.
Thank you very much. I started to join APRU in 2008. That year, University of Tokyo hosted APRU conference for global health. And in those days, I went to Singapore several times, and there was no pressure about publication. We had just a free conversation among us, and it was very fruitful. And I think it is important to respect a person using different type of lenses. Here now, we are using only one lens as an academic researcher, and this is very dangerous. We tend to evaluate a person by impact factor if we use only this lens. But if we use different lens, what are your hobbies? What sports do you like? What books you like? And then we start to know a person as a whole. And even if an impact factor is not so high, we can respect a person by using different lens. This is very important. So I think APRU is getting more academic, but I think it might be time to go back to the original APRU. And we may have more free conversation, not only among professors, but with students. So organizing this kind of free time communication might be very important to improve relationships. So sharing many aspects of us, and this may be very important for our future relationships. Thank you very much for today.
Thank you. Absolutely. I invite all of you to go to Bangkok so we can all get together and get to know each other better. So thank you, everyone. I knew the panelists would be fantastic. So thank you to all of you for being here, and also to the people that are attending, and once again to the whole team at Korea University and the APRU Sustainable Waste Management Program for organizing this lecture series and inviting me to join. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Professor Withers and panelists, for an engaging discussion and answering the questions posed by our attendees. Now, we request your understanding for capturing a group photo. Our team will assist in promoting you all as panelists. Please bear with us for a minute. You're almost done. A few more people. Yes. Yeah, so we can take the picture now. Everybody smile. Once more, smile, please. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. We have now reached the end of the session, and before concluding the webinar, I thank Professor Withers, our speaker for today's session, and our panelists for the valuable insights and for engaging the audience to an enlightening discussion. I thank all our attendees for their active participation. We extend our special thanks to the APRU and the APRU SWM program led by Professor Young-Shik Ok of Korea University for organizing these events and creating a learning and networking platform for everybody. We request you to look forward to our upcoming sessions too. The next session is on June 18 by Professor Alex Goday Fonde of Universidad del Desarrollo, Chile. Thank you once again, everyone. We hope you all have a great day ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.